Well, welcome to Sty Times, everybody. It's great to see y'all. Hey, hello, hello. Let's take a look at who's been hanging out in the chat while I've been running in circles here at the studio. Okay, Sheba B came in right away and said, "I'll be back." Yeah, she's back. And Justin Anderson, hey, it's great to see you, Justin. There's King Bluto. Good to see you, King Bluto. Awesome. Okay. Johnny Bravo. Yeah. Johnny Bravo made the comment Small town USA. I've been to many of them over the years. Many use old trees, debarked tree, still standing upward, and reused as power poles. Yep, I've seen that myself. I've seen towns like that where existing live trees were used as power poles. They top them out, limb them out, and just mount their insulators to them. They put a cross member on them sometimes, put half a dozen insulators on them, run their lines, and the dang tree's standing there dead. Yeah. And then there's everything spicy. Phil's just got out of work and he's going to be watching and listening on his way home. Yeah. Then we got Ben Kroll. Good morning, he says. Yes. Step Van Dan. Hello, Mr. Dan. It's good to see you. There's Kirk Whipper, Voyager Center. Tim, it is awesome, my friend. Awesome. Good group of folks tonight. Good group of folks hanging out there in the chat. Yeah, tonight's discussion. Wow. Small town USA. I'll tell you what, small town USA, and now there's going to be a lot of folks out there probably disagree with me, but I say small town USA is, boy, it's getting tough to find one. They're a rare breed. They're a rare breed. Especially when you compare it to small town USA 50 years ago to small town USA today. Very different atmosphere today compared to years back. Hey, Everlasting Soul is out in the chat. Great to see you. Well, I'll tell you what, I was born and raised in what I classify as a small town. Now, some people have argued with me and said, your town wasn't small. Well, yes, it was. It was small. Well, hello, Joe W. Life Adventures. Joey's in the house. The town I grew up in had a population of 1,500 people, 1,500 people. Now, back when that happened, I was born in 1957. Actually, I was born 2 days from now, February 11th, 1957. That community at its time, if you based a qualification on what is a small town in the USA, that one wouldn't have qualified it with 1,500 people in it. Plus, we were only about 20 miles outside of the city limits of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Gemma's Journey Grace just popped in the chat. It's great to see you, sweetie. But we were considered a small town. Well, it's because we were bordering a town that since then has grown over 1 million people. That town that I grew up in, 1,500 people. And Ben Kroll's saying over in the chat, anything under 500 is a small town. You'll find out after our discussion tonight I'll totally disagree. I'm sorry, bud, but I gotta disagree. I don't care what size the town is as far as population. Population to me is the worst indicator as whether it's small town USA or not. Number of people in the community isn't what makes it large or small. It's a mindset. It's a mindset. The heart of the community is its mindset, not its population. Now, if you want to look at it as large or small by volume, that's a fair argument. I would say that's a very fair argument. In fact, 500 compared to the sizes of our towns today, saying 500 is a small town. Yeah, I mean, nowadays, though, you talk to folk. I can't believe how many people I have met, and I've just been shocked when they say, I was born in a small town. I was raised in a small town. I know what it's like. And I ask them, well, where were you born and raised? Northeast Minneapolis. Say what? Northeast Minneapolis, that area, any one of those communities had anywhere from 15 to 30,000 people in just that one, each little community there. What we call little today. And they said they grew up in a small town. And oh boy, they won't back down either. I was raised we had a small town. That was a small town. We only had 2 Kmarts. What the heck? Okay. So the yeah, Johnny Bravo says small towns have that town drunk that keeps the lights on at the local bar. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Now, the town drunk, it's a good indicator. Is it a small town? Do you have a town drunk? There's another factor that goes with do you have one or not? It's does everybody know who he is? When the whole town knows who the town drunk is, you got a small town on your hands. The town I grew up in, we actually had 3 town drunks. And there wasn't a soul, 1,500 people in that town. There wasn't a soul. You could mention one of those town drunks, they knew exactly who you're talking about. Now, 1,500 people sounds like quite a few people. Town I grew up in, that was a small town. We knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody. 1,500 people. It's hard to believe that you would know that many people. Well, you don't know them personally, but you know of everybody. You either know them or something about them, or you know their family. You know that they've been in the community for years. You know their attachment to the community. It was very rare that you go, who is that? And when you did, somebody'd say, well, you know so-and-so. Yeah. Well, that's so-and-so's first cousin, blah, blah, blah. And you go, oh, I get it. Yeah. No. Now I can picture them. I know who you're talking about. That made it a small town because we knew everyone. I loved the town I grew up in. Today, it's one of my least favorite communities. I'll go back there. I haven't been back there for a couple of years now, but I got to go back. I got to go visit my hometown. I'm going to do that this coming summer. That town, when I was growing up, had little mom and pops businesses. It had little mom and pop grocery store. It had mom and pop laundromat. It had 5 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It had 5 bars, 1 church. It had post office, nice post office. Not huge, but it was a nice post office. Had a big lumber company there, lumber yard. It had a marina, had a restaurant, mom and pop restaurant, actually 2 restaurants at the time. No, I take that back. There were 3 that I forgot about. The Minnetonka Diner, that was a big diner, old fashioned 50s, built in the 50s. It had an A&W on the main drag through town. Had an A&W. Small town. Loved it. You go there today, if I showed you pictures of that town and then you drove through it today, you'd go, well, where's that town, the one you showed me? It's underneath what's here now. They raised that town. Everything got tore down and replaced. All these beautiful little businesses used to be along the lakefront, overlooking the lake. Oh, we even had a Chevrolet dealership, little tiny Chevrolet dealership there. Those are all gone. They're all replaced with anywhere from 8-story to 15-story tall condominiums and a hotel. All these high rises all over. The community those high rises sit in is gone. The only thing small town about it is if you know some of the little offshoot roads in that town and you take off down one of those, you'll get about 5 or 6 city blocks that you look and you go, oh my gosh, that's the way it must have looked in the 60s. There's only like 3 spots in that whole community that reflect the way it used to be. But guess what? The population there today is only 2,000. Well, that's the population of those people living in that community, because most of the population in that community is transient. The hotel, some of those condos, people are there for 6 months to a year and they move along. The fixed population only increased about 500 people. But they ruined the community. There's no community to it anymore. And there's a group of people that are struggling, trying to make it back into a community. And I keep telling them, you got your hands full, because the true community, those people aren't here anymore. They're gone. They left because of what was done here. They all left. There's only a couple of the original families of that community. Otherwise, they're all transplants. They don't even know the history of the community. At least they've got a historical center there in the community. There's 2 city parks. The Thor Thompson Park. I'll never forget Thor Thompson. Man, he was a huge guy. God, he was a monster. Most gentle giant you ever met. And he was the mayor of our town. Nicest guy you ever met. Big fella, too. God, he was a big man. They named a city park after him. Back in the 60s, my father put together the task force and we built this city park. Nice baseball field and big grassy open areas, playground equipment, picnic area. Turned out beautiful. That is still there, right in the middle of all of this citified high rises and everything. Another little part of town where the neighborhood has been kept somewhat intact is another small little city park, and they named that after my father, their first and last chief of police in that community. But otherwise, that town isn't small anymore. It's considered part of the Minneapolis greater metro area. So it's part of the metropolitan area. It's no longer far enough out of the city to be considered a suburb. It's part of their metropolitan area. It's a shame. It's a shame. There was something beautiful about it being a small town that is now gone. It's lost. It's lost. Now, there's a lot of small towns out there. We're talking about population size. There's one in Minnesota that I got a kick out. And I had to ask questions. And the answer I got was kind of comical. The name of the town was Now Then. And it had a sign that said entering now then, right? Didn't have the population on it or nothing. Just said entering now then. You drive past that. You look in the mirror, you realize there's another sign right on the back of it. Turn around, go back, take a look at that sign. What's it say? And it says entering now then. It says that on both sides of the sign. Well, that sign's right by a crossroad where two county roads are coming in and meeting this state road. And that's where the sign sat. So it didn't matter which direction you're going. At the same point, it says entering now then. Well, at that intersection, it's all farm country. There's 4 farms, right? One on each corner there. There's 4 farms there. Down the one road a little ways is a church, a big church, really big church. I saw an old fellow out at his mailbox one day when I was driving through that little town, and I stopped and I go, "Whoa, could I ask you something about now then?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." So I asked him, I said, "You been here long?" He goes, "Oh, I was born and raised here," he said. He's an old fellow, and I was young at the time. I was in my late 20s. He says, my pop was born here also because my granddad settled here when he moved here from the old country. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I said, "But where's the town? I see the sign, but where's the town?" He says, "You're in it. This is it. Just a bunch of farms and the church." I go, "You got to be kidding me." He says, No. And we're an organized town. We got a city council, all that. We just don't have any town stuff. He says, "But that's not what makes a town." Now, that's what really stuck in my mind. He says, "What makes a town is a mindset, the way people think." He says, all these people settled about the same time in this spot, this area. And they were all of the same belief, and they were all same nationality, blah, 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 blah. So they built a big church. And they got together and said, "We need to be a town." And then they got in a discussion, well, what should we call our town? And he said, one person says it should be Jonesville. And he goes, and everybody else said, "Oh, well, yeah, sure, that's what you think it should be because your last name is Jones. That's the only reason you want it to be Jonesville." Well, then somebody else jumped in and said, "Hey, call it Stanley." And they said, "We are calling it Stanley. Stanley, sit down." Well, of course, each person, they would come up with the name of the town that had to do with them personally and their family. And he said one old boy in the group, after they spent several hours arguing over what the town's name should be, said, "That's it. Now then." And he hesitated before he finished his statement. And someone else said, "I like that." They thought he was saying that's what the name should be. No, he was going to say, "Now then, we discussed this long enough. Let's come back later, discuss it." No, they took what he said out of his context and decided that's a good name. So they named the town Now Then. And because they never actually built a town, their town was people, wasn't buildings. It became a standing joke, I guess you'd say, that town, now you see it, then you don't. I mean, that's literally what it is. One sign facing both directions. Now then, there it was, up and gone. It was there, but then it was gone. Now then, a true small town USA community. And he said, everybody goes to that church. Everybody goes to that church. And we have all these events, man. We have parties and things. And we do the 4th of July big celebration at the church. He says, we have these big picnics all summer at the church. We have a volunteer fires department and the fire truck. Guess where it's parked? At the church. So the church, for them, was the small town. So that stuck with me, that what he said. The small town's not the buildings. It's the people. It's the people that are living together in the same place. And yeah, Bannock, Montana. Look that up. There's some good history there. There is, definitely. Thanks, Lawn Dog. Now, we talk about, Johnny Bravo's talking about, somebody finds something valuable, like diamonds, gold, whatever, and next thing you know, you got a boom town. Next thing you know, you got a ghost town. Yeah. Now, I have to say, I lived in northwestern Montana. I'm not going to target the town I lived in. It was a unique little town. Had a population of, at that time, 107 people. And the odd thing about it is 62 of those 107 lived on the outer edges of the town, of the community. The other 40 plus actually lived in town proper. It had 2 bars, it had a restaurant, it had a motel, it had a restaurant, and it had a general merchandise store. Sounds like quite a bit, don't it? For 107 people. Now, if you went out for, I'll bet, 20 miles out, all the way around it, diameter around it, you'd only increase that population to about 350 people in that whole area. Not counting, 350 people minus the 100 plus from town. town, there's not a lot of work in the area. You had to be into mining, logging, or just be willing to do anything anybody would offer you a couple dollars an hour for. Well, I heard there was a job available. Local guy, heavy construction kind of guy, all heavy equipment. He approached me and he says, I got an opening available. I said, I heard. I said, I'd be interested. He says, you're on. I'll put you on. It's short, but it'll pay you good. Well, it was operating backhoe, excavating the old water mains out of this tiny little town, getting all the old water mains out and replacing them with modern. And they were big water mains too. I think they were 16-inch water mains. My first excavation, when he told me what we'd be digging up, I thought he was full of BS. He just pulling my leg, right? Oh no, he was right. The whole water main system in this town was made out of 24-inch, 2-foot round cedar logs, tapered at one end, concave at the other, and they're just stuck in each other. And they were hollow. All the water ran through those wooden water mains. Well, some of them rotted out, of course, and they'd excavate it, pull that log out, and then they'd stick a piece of PVC pipe from one end of the one to the 12 feet away to the next one and just deal with it. And it leaked everywhere. It was leaking everywhere. You could see where the water mains were. If you really looked, you could see wet spots in the ground where that water main was. So when they originally built the town, they plumbed the whole town with wooden water mains. And I asked them, I said, why wouldn't they have used pipe of some sort, iron, something, back in the day, either clay type pipe or iron. And he said because cedar was so readily available, they used cedar logs. And it was a logging town at the time. And I said, boy, I wonder how big the town was. He had pictures, old family pictures. He was 4th generation there. And rare that you find a 4th. A 5th is amazing. But because it was the late 1800s when it got truly settled. So a lot of generations since then. So anyway, he showed me these pictures, and I go, my God, that wasn't a small town. He goes, no, it wasn't. There was over 6,000 people lived in this town. Now we have 100. Holy Lord. He said it went from small town, just a few little mining shacks and a couple of loggers with their old shacks, to a boom town. Logging industry went crazy, and that town began to boom. They put in this huge mill and all this, and they floated logs on the river right in front of the town there. And he said then the logging industry went down the tubes. 1906, major fire, burnt the whole region, and logging went down the tubes. And he said so did the town. All of a sudden it went to a city, a small city, back to a small town. Those that stuck it out and stayed there and had multiple generations of family that lived in that town. Oh, they believe they own that town. And they've got that small town mentality. You need to know everybody in town. And you need to know if they're doing well or if they're doing poorly. And those that are doing poorly, everybody else in town would show up. And before you know it, they're doing well again. That was that mentality. Small towns. Another one in Montana. I'm not going to give you the location. I don't want to disparage any community. I almost bought a hotel in that community. Me and a buddy of mine. It was a joint venture, and there was a hotel for sale. Neat hotel. Old Western style hotel. It was 3 stories. On the main floor you walked in, had the main lobby, front desk, office behind it. Off to the side, you go through this big archway, you walk in, and the rest of the ground floor was a bar. A beautiful big bar, old style furniture, everything. It was neat. It was a neat old West style bar. Upstairs, the 2 floors upstairs, each floor had 6 hotel rooms. All right? Well, the first floor of hotel rooms, each room had its own commode, had its own bathroom. The top floor had 2 bathrooms. 3 rooms would share one, 3 rooms would share the other. There was no bathroom in your room. You had to go out in the hall and use the bathroom, right? Neat place, neat. Loved it. And the price was sweet. Well, we didn't need it for an income. We wanted it for investment. Well, we were looking at retirement 40 years down the road. Wouldn't it be neat to retire running this hotel? There were 3 houses that went with it. One on either side, one behind it. 2 of those houses we converted into our homes. I'd have one, he'd have one. And we'd retire there and just run that hotel every day. Retire. Sounded like a blast to me. So we went to this little town. We didn't know enough about it. We just knew that sounded great. Went there, and the hotel looked pretty good. It needed to be painted, a little bit of outside repairs, but the inside was truly in excellent condition. We figured we'd have to additionally invest less than $10,000 into the building, and it'd be perfect. Wasn't happening. I wasn't in that little town. We went straight to the hotel, but we looked at the town pulling it. We would have owned half of the town. Literally half of that town would have belonged to us. I couldn't live there. I couldn't live there today because I did hear about a year ago someone that had been there, and they said it hasn't changed. So it's the same. If you came from the city and went to that town and you went in, it had a tiny one gas pump gas station. It had a little tiny hardware store, general merchandise kind of store that was closed, shut down completely, all the inventory gone. And it had 14 homes and this tiny little town hall and this little cracker box post office and several homes, all within that city limits. But the hotel and the 3 homes it owned and its adjacent property that had a big old shed on it made up half of that town. Well, I walked in that hotel. We walked in there. There were 5 people in there. It took me almost 5 minutes to finally get the bartender to get off of his phone just to get us a couple of beers, And we wanted to talk to him about the place, that it's on the market, who is he, what's his involvement, because we may buy this place. Took me 5 minutes to get his damn attention. We realized the other people, one was sitting there reading the Chicago Tribune, the other one had the Wall Street Journal, and they're talking about the world and what's going on in these big cities. And we're just watching. The thing that I started to realize is I don't think this is a small town. We found out that the town actually only had a population of 35 people. I mean, if they filled the hotel, the 12 rooms in that hotel, they'd probably double their population. However, everybody in that town had this city mindset. Well, I found out from this bartender that of the 35 people that lived in that town, all 35 of them were from the big cities. 16 of them were from Los Angeles. And he said, oh no, he says, we might be one of the smallest towns in the country, but we've got the big city mentality. We know how to run a town. Well, just checking out the hotel and walking through and stuff, I noticed, right, you come in the main door right there on the wall, you can't miss it. It's this big board, big panel with 4 letters attached to it, 4 full pages. And it said, take notice above it in big letters. And I started reading, looking. Those were the lists of that town's rules, regulations, everything you better know in that town, or you're going to get a ticket for it. I got 2 citations, and all I did was show up to visit and see if I liked the hotel. And I ended up with 2 citations. One of them was for parking. The other one, I got a citation for obstructing a business because where I parked at the little gas station, they said didn't leave room if somebody came in with a camper or big truck to get to the pump. There was nowhere else to park except where I parked, but you could get through with a single vehicle without a problem. Maybe a big trailered vehicle would have trouble, but no, I got a citation for obstructing a business. The 2 citations together, I think, came to like $30. But still, that was $30 I didn't plan on spending. And the parking ticket was because I was parked at an angle in front of the hotel and not square to the hotel. So technically, both tickets were parking. I don't like to say it, but that was the biggest small town I've ever been in. They were all city folk, every one of them. Now, I don't fault them for it. I can imagine what they were thinking. Oh, I'm sick of the city life, man. I'm moving out to the country. And they probably found this little town and said, hey, this town's dying and they're selling property out dirt cheap. I'm going to buy me a piece of that property with a house on it. I'm going to move there. Well, eventually, nothing but city folk bought out all the locals. Locals are gone. There's nobody in that town that was born and raised anywhere near it. All those people were born and raised in the city, and they brought their city ways with them. It's not a small town. It only is if you rate it on population. On population, it's a very small town, 35 people. On mentality, there's Chicago. they're Milwaukee, they're New York, they're San Francisco. That's the mentality in that tiny little town. So they're not small town USA. They're big city USA, detached. All they did was detach themselves from the big city and take their little piece of big city and put it over here. Very disappointing. Other small towns. I bought a beautiful 24-acre piece of property, had a 3-bedroom home on it, had 2 barns. Beautiful. I was raising horses at the time, had horses at the time. And it was beautiful property, 24 acres, 20 acres of which was all covered with big virgin white pines. They were huge. I had a couple of them on there that were 4 foot around or 4 foot diameter. They're huge. And you could walk through that property. There were nice trails on the property between all these monstrous pines and these little meadows here and there. Beautiful property, beautiful. All within city limits, 24 acres. City limits was 1 square mile. Tiny little town. It's got a population, the 2010 census had it at 118 people. So 120, we'll say 120 people. When I had the property there, we only had about 80 people within city limits. So I owned a huge part of town. And we were located right on the main drag through town. Well, the town had 3 churches. It had the Roman Catholic Church. It had the Polish, I believe it's the Polish National and the Russian Orthodox, those 3 churches. They're all Catholicism. They're all Catholic based. It had 3 bars, 1 for each church. It had a little restaurant. It had a general store that was groceries and mostly hardware stuff, farming related stuff. Small store. Had a post office. That's about it. Oh, it had 1 little branch bank. And it was little. It was little. The front lobby, 1 teller with a side office and a back room where their vault was. That's it. That's all bigger that little bank was. Small town USA. Of the population in that town, 80% of those people, 80% of them were multi-generation from the founders of that town. Their original families, 80% of them. Would I recommend? They're pure small town USA. I mean, everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew what everybody's doing, did, or is going to do. Everybody knew everything and everyone. Oh, it had a school, its own school. The only thing it didn't have, it was K through 9. High school was the neighboring community. They bused them over there. Full functional city, mayor, city council, whole 9 yards, a constable. I actually won the election for constable in that town, and I declined. I wouldn't take it. I didn't want it. I won as a write-in. I had 2 votes. The other fellow that ran unopposed for, I guess it was 10 terms from what they said. He had 1 vote, his own. He voted for himself, and he was the only vote he got. I got 2 votes from 2 people that wrote me in. And I declined it. I said, no, not interested. I wouldn't send somebody to that town, and I definitely would never tell them you need to buy into that town. Hey, we only got 15 minutes left to show. I haven't shouted out my members. We're going to get back to this little town. I want to finish telling you about it. But first, let's take a quick look at my members. They're wonderful folks. Takes less than 50 seconds. Love y'all. Stay put. We'll be right back. Great folks, I'm telling you. If you haven't got any of those channels, check them all out, would you? They're awesome people. Hey, so this little town I was living in, it's just, I mean, you drive through it and you go, isn't this a nice little town? It had, there's all mixed residential and business all over. In fact, it did have a movie theater, but it was shut down. They shut it down, never reopened it. I thought that was a shame. That was right next to my property. I had a bar on one side of my property, and I had that movie theater on the next. And I had 24 beautiful acres between the two. Well, the reason I would never tell somebody to live there is those old generations that still controlled the town, 8 out of 10 people. You were not allowed to belong to that town. If you weren't born and raised in that town, you didn't have a cold chance of ever being accepted as part of that town. They were not going to accept me or my family, period. They did that to everybody that came into their town, especially if you purchased property. They'd come right out and tell you had no right to buy property in this town unless we told you you did. And what do you mean? I mean, the person that was selling it didn't have a problem at all with me buying. Well, I found out why. They were second generation and still hadn't been accepted. They didn't want nothing to do with that town. They said, oh yeah, it looks like a quaint little, beautiful little town till you get to know what's going on in that little town. Welcome to small town USA. I mean, they can be that way. They can be so cliquey. They're almost too cliquey. And those towns typically eventually die off. There's another one not far from it, from where I live now, that my ex-wife was attached to. Her family goes back 4 generations. Well, now it goes back 5 generations in that community, in that town. That little town has a population, total population in the town of about 40 people. 3 families. Well, now you can say there's about 8 families. But that's a misnomer. You got to take a look at, no, there's 8 family names. Used to be 3 family names. Now there's 8 family names. And that's because the daughters of the 3 original families have married outside names. So those new names now are part of the town. It makes it look like, oh, the town's becoming more diversified. No, guess what? No, those ladies and those families are originally from that town. They married outside of the town and brought the outsider in. And I say outsider because they are treated as an outsider. No matter they're married to the daughter of so and so, who was the son of so and so and so and so and so and so back when they founded the town. No matter. Married in is an outsider. Or she's an outsider. Yeah. But if it's a she, she'd still have one of those family names. So she's a little better tolerated. But they literally show no tolerance to outsiders whatsoever. The town's dying. It used to have 2 bars. Both bars served food. It had a grocery store, general merchandise store, and it had a very nice gas station and a post office and a school, elementary school. The elementary school is now their historical center, and what they just lease it out for people's events, weddings, graduations, things like that. One of the bars completely folded, closed up. Their grocery store, general store, gone. Empty building, been empty now for about 25 years. Their gas station. My brother-in-law owned that gas station. He's a direct descendant of one of the originating families of that community. And he's still barely tolerated. Gas station is now shut down. It's been shut down now for about 10 years. Nobody will buy it. Nobody will start a business in that town because of the clickiness of small town USA. They'd be outsiders and they'd be treated as such. Hey, Charlie Gordon, good to see ya. Welcome. The Saltwater Borns in the house too. It's great to see you folks. And there's Logan Tyler. We will deal with Logan. The not conductive to the channel, we'll say. But walked away product on shelves still there 40 years later. Yeah, Johnny Bravo's talking about how some of these businesses would wrap it up and just shut her down. There's a lot that is lost in our world as we lose our small towns and that small town mentality. It's like I had said very earlier. The town I grew up in, if there was somebody down and out, it didn't take long. The whole town knew about it. And then all of a sudden you'd find out, oh no, they're back on their feet. They're doing quite well. Why? What happened? Well, the community showed up and picked them back up, got them back on their feet. Now everybody screams and hollers, the state needs to help me. The feds need to help me. Where before you didn't even have to ask. The word would get out and about. And the community would come together in some way, would help you out, get you back on your feet. Well, the reason it's that way now is because we don't know each other. We don't even know who needs and who doesn't need anymore. You know, you hear about people that need and that, but it's not common knowledge anymore. Now, when I was talking about the size of things, I've seen communities within communities. Minneapolis, St. Paul's a good example. There was a couple of communities, neighborhoods in Minneapolis that I frequented. I went to all the time. They had their little corner mom and pop grocery store. They had their little bar, little pub, local pub. They had a couple of small mom and pop stores, hardware store, blah, blah. They had a barber shop. And that's something we had in my town was a barber shop. But they had all those little help the community kind of little mom and pop businesses and their neighborhood. All the neighbors knew each other, man. They all knew each other. And they'd have a barbecue at this guy's house, and they're going to have it over at that guy's house next weekend. They're going to do this, they're going to do that together, the whole community. They're constantly getting together. The greater, bigger political force of things was the city of Minneapolis, but in their tiny little neighborhood. It had the small town mentality. We need to know each other, man. We need to help each other out when we need it. We need to praise each other when we've done good. And we need to come together and do things that help us as a group of people. That's pure small town frame of mind. So in the heart of this huge metropolis, this huge city system, you got this little small town community built within it. Might have a population of 500, 600, 800 people in that neighborhood, that community. Small town USA. There are small towns all over this country. Many aren't recognized because they're hidden amongst all of the rigmarole of the big city. I love small town USA, even with its quirks. And I mean, there's a lot of judgment that goes on by the small towners that live in those small towns. They really do like to judge outsiders a lot. But I can see where it comes from. They don't want their community to end up like that one I was talking about in Montana, where all of a sudden it ended up. It's all small town from the outside. You get to the inside and you find out, no, it's all city. And Charlie Gordon saying I live in a small city of about 45,000 people and the people are just plain jerks. Seeing that's it is some people would say that's not small, 45,000 people. I live in a town that's 10,000 people. And today, knock at my door, I go answer the door, and it's this fella that's running for mayor. I get a kick out of him. I really do. I've been following the guy, watching and listening and talking to locals and find out this fella, yeah, he thinks a lot like I do. And I think he could do some good for the city. I really do. So I committed to the fella today that I'm going to vote for you, man. And he says, you seem to know a lot about what's going on around town, but I've never seen you at city council meetings or anything. I said, oh, they know me. Boy, they know me. I'm involved, but I'm involved kind of off the charts. I go to their offices. I talk to them. I said, if you win and you become our mayor, we'll be chatting. We'll be having coffee. I'll be coming to your office. We'll talk. And he said, I love that. I love it. Thank you very much. It was great to meet you, blah, blah, blah. He said, what I like is your small town attitude. And I told him, you wouldn't believe it, man. I got a YouTube channel, and that's my topic tonight on my show. So we kind of got a kick out of that. 10,000 people here, and they try so hard to keep it with that small town mentality. We've got big city problems, but we all want to be small towners. Hey, MBA's in the house. Good to see you, Rowan. Hey. Great to see you. Yeah, it's another great channel, boy. MBA. You guys got to, if you haven't been over to Mountain Bushcrafters Alliance, get over there. Watch him, sub him, leave him a thumbs up and a comment. He's a great person, boy. He's more of the type of person we need in our world. I'm telling you. Well, that's it for the show, guys. Here's Sty is in small town USA. Gonna shut her down, and I love chatting with you. And if you haven't subbed, please do sub. Give us a thumbs up. And tomorrow night, around the campfire at 7 p.m. Central Time. Hey, love to see you all over there. Just hang out and chat. I'll have all my buddies up on the panel, and we'll chat away for part of the evening. And then again, got Friday, another Sty Times. If you watch the end of this, the trailer, you'll get to see what the topic is on Friday. We'll have fun with that topic. You'll get to hear about how I'm not all that. Hey, love you guys. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.